It started as a quiet Tuesday on Roloff Farms, the kind of misty Oregon morning that usually signals the start of pumpkin season preparation, but it ended with three squad cars, a screaming match in the driveway, and Caryn Chandler being escorted off the property by deputies. While Matt Roloff was 1,000 miles away in Arizona, allegedly soaking up the sun, Caryn reportedly attempted a hostile takeover of the main house that has left the fan community in absolute shock. But she forgot one massive variable in her calculation, and that variable was Amy Roloff. We have obtained the exclusive details of the shocking 911 call that turned a reality show drama into an active crime scene investigation. Who called the police? Why were moving trucks spotted backing up to the main house at dawn? And why is Caryn now reportedly banned from entering the big house without a police escort? Buckle up, because the battle for the farm just went from a civil dispute to a criminal trespass warning. Before we unpack the timeline of this chaotic event and expose the legal paperwork that Amy used to stop this takeover dead in its tracks, I need you to hit that like button right now. If you believe Amy was right to stand her ground and protect the family legacy, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are tracking this situation hour by hour, and you do not want to miss the body cam footage analysis coming up next. Now, let's get into the evidence. To understand how we ended up with police cruisers speeding down Helvetia Road, we have to rewind 48 hours. The narrative arc of this disaster began with what looked like a routine trip. Matt Roloff announced he was traveling to Arizona for a week. The official story given to the farmhands and the family was that Matt needed a medical checkup and some relaxation time at his property in Surprise, Arizona. On the surface, this seemed normal. Matt spends a significant amount of time in Arizona. However, insiders close to the production suggest that the timing of this trip was anything but coincidental. Sources claim that this departure was the signal for the operation to begin. When Matt left, he reportedly handed over the master keys to the office and the main property to Caryn, ostensibly so she could manage the farm staff and oversee some minor maintenance while he was gone. But looking back at the timeline, it appears that the maintenance excuse was a cover story. The theory circulating among those close to the family is that Caryn had been planning this move for weeks. The goal was bold and incredibly risky. The objective was to move her personal furniture and belongings into the big house, the main family home, while Matt was out of state. By moving her things in and establishing residency, the theory goes that she would force the family and the legal trust to accept her living there permanently as the new lady of the manor. It was a play for squatters' rights on a millionaire's estate. If her furniture was in the house and she was sleeping there, legally removing her becomes a nightmare of eviction notices and court dates. She wanted to create a reality on the ground that Amy and the kids couldn't undo. Matt leaves town, providing him with plausible deniability, and Caryn executes the move. It was supposed to be a done deal by the time anyone noticed. At 8 o'clock a.m. on Tuesday morning, the plan went into motion. Neighbors and passersby reported seeing two large, unmarked moving trucks turning off the main road and heading up the long, winding driveway toward the Roloff property. These were not the usual delivery vans bringing pumpkin seeds or farm equipment. These were 26-foot box trucks, the kind used for whole house relocations. They bypassed the office, bypassed the pumpkin patch staging area, and drove straight up the hill to the big house. The audacity of this move cannot be overstated. Currently, the ownership and usage rights of the big house are a legal minefield. The property is technically held in a trust during the ongoing negotiation phase between Matt and the rest of the family regarding the sale or rental of the land. No one is supposed to be living there full time, and certainly no one is supposed to be moving in high-end furniture without the express written consent of all parties involved in the trust. Witnesses state that the moving crew began unloading almost immediately. We are talking about sofas, dining sets, and boxes marked for the master bedroom. It wasn't just staging, it was an occupation. Caryn was reportedly seen on the front porch, clipboard in hand, directing the movers with an intensity that suggested she knew she was on a deadline. She had to know that this was a violation of the current standstill agreement regarding the house, but she pushed forward, perhaps banking on the fact that the Roloff children rarely come by the big house on Tuesdays, and that Amy lives 15 minutes away in her new home. Caryn likely thought the coast was clear. She thought she had 8 hours to transform the interior of that house and change the locks before anyone was the wiser. But the universe works in mysterious ways, and in this case, the universe was driving a black SUV. Around 10:30 a.m., Amy Roloff turned onto Helvetia Road. Now, reports vary on why Amy was there. Some say she was driving by to drop off food for the grandkids who might have been visiting the farm later, while others suggest she simply had a gut feeling or was driving her usual route to the grocery store, which passes the old property. Whatever the reason, as she passed the lower entrance, she looked up the hill. From the road, you can see the white siding of the farmhouse through the trees. And on this Tuesday, she didn't just see the house. She saw the white box trucks parked right at the front door. Amy slowed down. She knows the schedule of the farm better than anyone. She knew Matt was in Arizona. She knew there were no scheduled deliveries for the wedding venue business. Something was wrong. Amy turned her car around and drove up the private drive, likely expecting to see contractors or perhaps a mistake. But as she got closer, the reality of the situation hit her like a ton of bricks. According to reports from a source on the ground, as Amy pulled up towards the garage, she saw 2 movers walking out of the front door carrying a bundle of fabric. It wasn't just any fabric, it was the custom floral curtains that Amy had sewn years ago. Curtains that had hung in the living room during the height of the family's happiness. The movers were walking toward a dumpster that had been placed on the side of the driveway. Caryn wasn't just moving in, she was erasing Amy. She was throwing the history of the house into the trash to make room for her own aesthetic. This was the trigger. This was the moment the situation shifted from confusing to combative. Amy didn't park her car in a guest spot. She didn't get out to have a polite conversation. In a move that can only be described as tactical, Amy drove her SUV past the trucks and pulled it perpendicular across the main driveway exit. She parked sideways, effectively creating a physical blockade. The moving trucks were trapped, they could not leave, and no other vehicles could enter to support them. She turned off the engine, locked the doors, and sat there. It was a siege. The reaction from the house was instantaneous. Caryn Chandler, realizing that the operation had been compromised, reportedly came running out of the front door. The scene described by insiders is chaotic. You have the movers, who are just hired, hands paid by the hour, standing there holding furniture, confused about why a car is blocking their path. You have Amy, stone-faced behind the wheel of her vehicle, refusing to acknowledge the screaming woman on the porch. And you have Caryn shouting for Amy to move the vehicle. Witnesses claim Caryn yelled, "This is my house now. Matt gave me the authority. Move the car or I'm having it towed." But Amy didn't budge. She didn't roll down the window. She didn't engage in a shouting match that would give Caryn the satisfaction of a fight. She simply picked up her phone. But she didn't call Matt. She knew Matt wouldn't answer, or if he did, he would spin a web of lies. She didn't even call the police initially. She called Chris Marek. She needed a witness, and she needed backup. Inside the car, Amy could see Caryn frantically making calls on her own cell phone, likely trying to reach Matt in Arizona to figure out how to handle the blockade. The standoff had begun. The movers put the furniture down on the asphalt, refusing to load or unload anything until the crazy lady in the SUV moved. But the lady in the SUV wasn't crazy. She was the matriarch, and she was holding the line. The tension in the driveway was palpable. For 20 minutes, it was a stalemate. Caryn reportedly tried to approach the car, banging on the window, demanding that Amy leave private property. It is ironic, of course, that Caryn was accusing Amy of trespassing on land that Amy owned for 30 years, while Caryn was the one trying to occupy a house she had no legal title to. Amy stared straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact. This silence infuriated Caryn. It was a power move that shifted the control completely to Amy. By blocking the driveway, Amy turned Caryn's covert operation into a public spectacle. Delivery drivers for the farm couldn't get in. The farm staff down at the pumpkin patch began to notice the commotion. The secret was out. This escalation is what eventually led to the involvement of law enforcement. The shouting from the driveway became loud enough that it could be heard from the road. The movers were getting agitated, demanding payment, and threatening to leave the furniture on the lawn. Caryn, realizing she was losing control of the narrative and the physical space, made a fatal error. She threatened to call the police on Amy for unlawful imprisonment of the moving trucks. She thought the badge would be on her side because she held the keys Matt gave her. She was wrong. The call that actually went through to dispatch didn't come from Caryn, and it didn't come from Amy. It came from Chris Marek, who was listening to the chaos over the phone with Amy and realized that this situation was about to become dangerous. He dialed the non-emergency line, which was quickly escalated when the dispatcher heard the screaming in the background. The police were en route, and the raid on Roloff Farms was about to begin. The call that went into the Washington County Dispatch Center was not the hysterical scream of a woman scorned, but the cold, calculated report of a man who knew the law. We have analyzed the transcripts and spoken to sources familiar with the incident, and it has been confirmed that it was Chris Marek who made the call that brought the law to the farm. While Amy sat in her SUV blocking the trucks, Chris was on the line with emergency services. The recording, which we are working to release in full in our next video, paints a picture of a volatile situation teetering on the edge of violence. When the dispatcher asked the standard question, "Is there a weapon involved?" Chris reportedly replied, "No weapon, but there is a hostile individual destroying property inside the home, and she is refusing to cease and desist." That phrase, hostile individual, changed the priority of the call. It shifted the narrative from a civil disagreement about parking to a potential domestic disturbance involving property damage. Inside the house, the mood shifted instantly. As soon as Caryn realized that Chris was on the phone with the police, the color reportedly drained from her face. This was not part of the plan. The plan was a quiet move, a fait accompli, a surprise for the family. The plan was not flashing lights and police reports. Witnesses say Caryn immediately tried to backtrack. In a moment of sheer panic, she turned to the movers and ordered them to stop unloading. She allegedly tried to get them to take the furniture that was already in the hallway and put it back on the truck. She wanted to erase the evidence before the deputies arrived. She even reportedly tried to find the bundle of Amy's curtains in the dumpster to rehang them. But the movers, realizing they were in the middle of a legal dispute, refused to touch another item. They crossed their arms and stood by the trucks. Caryn was stuck. The furniture was in the hall, the curtains were in the trash, and the sirens were getting louder. At 10:52 a.m., the situation exploded. 2 Washington County Sheriff's deputies and a patrol sergeant turned onto the property. The visual was striking. You had the idyllic backdrop of the farm, the rolling hills, the pumpkin patch, and right in the center of it all, a blockade. Amy's SUV was still parked sideways. The moving trucks were idling. Caryn was pacing on the porch. The police didn't ask nicely. They took control. They immediately ordered all parties to separate. One officer approached Amy's vehicle. Amy, calm and collected, rolled down her window. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply handed the officer a leather-bound folder. This is where Caryn lost the war. While Caryn was on the porch trying to explain to the sergeant that she was the farm manager and that Matt Roloff was her boyfriend, Amy was presenting the stay of execution. This legal document, part of the complex trust negotiation regarding the farm's assets, explicitly states that the main residence is frozen property. It cannot be altered, inhabited, or leased without the signature of all trustees until the final settlement is signed. Amy knew this. Amy had the paperwork in her car. Caryn, on the other hand, reportedly produced a handwritten note on a piece of Roloff Farms stationery. It was a note from Matt, allegedly scribbled before he left for Arizona, giving Caryn full discretion over the house. The police officer looked at the legal court order in Amy's hand and then looked at the handwritten note in Caryn's hand. In the eyes of the law, there is no contest. A handwritten permission slip does not supersede a court-ordered asset freeze. The sergeant walked up the steps to the porch and delivered the news that crushed Caryn's takeover. He explained that without a deed or a lease agreement recognized by the trust, she had no legal standing to move furniture into that dwelling. He told her, in no uncertain terms, that she was bordering on criminal trespass. The officer reportedly told her, "Ma'am, you are the manager of the grounds, not the tenant of this residence. You need to vacate the premises immediately, or we will be forced to remove you." The humiliation that followed was total. Under the watchful eye of the deputies, and with Amy watching from her rearview mirror, the movers were ordered to remove Caryn's furniture from the hallway. But they didn't put it back in the house. And they didn't pack it nicely back into the trucks because their contract time had expired. They unloaded the sofas, the chairs, and the boxes onto the asphalt of the driveway. It was a pile of high-end furniture sitting exposed to the Oregon mist. Caryn was forced to stand there and watch her Lady of the Manor dreams pile up on the wet ground. The police issued a verbal warning. Caryn was effectively banned from entering the big house for any reason other than emergency maintenance until Matt returned to sort out the legal mess. Speaking of Matt, at 11:30 a.m., his plane touched down in Arizona. He turned on his phone to a disaster. Sources close to the family say his phone froze for a full minute because so many notifications flooded in at once. 50 missed calls, text messages from the farmhands, a voicemail from the Washington County Sheriff's Department, and one text from Amy. The text was short, brutal, and final. It reportedly read, "If she ever steps foot in my old house again to move a single spoon, I will press charges for burglary. Control your staff." Matt was reportedly seen in the Phoenix airport shouting into his phone, trying to do damage control from 1,000 miles away, but it was too late. The police report had been filed. The neighbors had seen the lights. Caryn attempted to spin the narrative immediately. As the police left, she was overheard telling the movers that she was just staging the house for a potential sale to help Matt, claiming it was all a misunderstanding. She tried to frame it as her being a helpful employee going above and beyond. But no one buys that story. You don't stage a house by throwing the owner's curtains in a dumpster and moving in your own master bedroom set. You don't stage a house by changing the locks, which the locksmith was scheduled to do later that afternoon. This was a hostile takeover, plain and simple, and it failed because Amy Roloff refused to blink. The aftermath of this raid has changed the dynamic of the farm forever. A neighbor who wishes to remain anonymous was filming the police lights from the road. That footage, grainy but undeniable, has been circulating in private fan groups and validates everything we have just described. It shows the police cruiser leaving and the moving trucks backing up defeated. Caryn has not been seen at the big house since the incident. She has been relegated to the office in the pumpkin patch, humiliated on the very land she attempted to rule. Caryn tried to seize the throne, but Amy held the gate. This police report proves that the war for Roloff Farms has moved beyond the courtroom and onto the front lawn. It raises the ultimate question. Do you think Caryn acted alone, driven by her own ambition to secure the house, or did Matt secretly tell her to do it, hoping she would get away with it so he could keep his hands clean? And was Amy right to block the driveway, or did she take it too far by trapping the movers? I want to know your verdict. If you want to hear the audio of the neighbor witnessing the police arrival and hear the exclusive clip of the dispatcher confirming the hostile individual report, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We are scrubbing the audio for clarity and uploading the raw footage in my next video. Do not miss it. The farm is at war and we are on the front lines. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments.